Yeah, I kind of start where Fabian left off, just putting in some points that maybe were not so forefront in the previous presentation. So generally, I was pretty happy that we were able to come together and kind of come to a plan where a lot of people could agree on, at least the 6 of us who sat last week together. So for me, being pretty new in Orville, my starting point was to kind of go through all the previous planning that existed. And so that's why I also started kind of overlaying all the existing plans and trying to get an understanding what the planning situation is, and then also picking up on the current discussions and mainly also building on Fabian's input. And so the 3 main points that I started off looking at the traffic was the no interference with Kotakurai, minimizing the cutting and parting of the forest with the outer ring road. And so, and generally the thinking of how to reduce the traffic on the ground to allow for a pedestrian zone in the residential zone. And I don't want to repeat too much what Fabian said. One point for me that was interesting is that in Suhasini's plan, she included a number of deviations in the plan, which also includes kind of this cutting through here. Her version goes more here. And altering the radii up here, and also moving the outer ring a little inside here so that you don't have to demolish as many houses. And one major feedback in the last round was also to take the entrance series, the proposed entrance from the 99 master plan. And I think this is very valid to kind of, if we as Orville want to have some proper welcoming gesture, then it should be planned. One trick then to use this entrance and still have a bypass was this kind of connecting road, which then goes again outside. In this version, I included also the transport node, which is in the 99 plan. I think there's not much that speaks against it, actually. For a first step to solve the parking solution, maybe to get something in place like a car sharing, we could have parking houses here, right at the entrance, and the visitors parking here. Yeah, and maybe one point that I kind of find important is also to think that maybe we keep using these roads, but there are different points where this road can be cut, like in the entrance here or with a line of goodwill there. So to kind of make the inner zone more calm. I try to become to get a little bit more specific with the plazas around the crown and identifying centers where it would kind of be natural to have these plazas. The one historic community space is the Solar Kitchen, and with the beginning of the then pedestrian zone, the promenade, you also could call it, you would have one big plaza, maybe the biggest. Then where the radials meet the crown, in front of the line of goodwill, then there's already a kind of established axis, which is also from Suhasini's proposal for the development of the international zone. So one major plaza here on that axis, maybe one secondary, then in the middle of the industrial zone, just at the heart, in the center between the lines of force. One small comment, there was a lot of discussion around, okay, what to do with these lines of force that are crossing these canyons here. And for me, I found interesting that in Anupama's plan, this problem doesn't really show up because she already moved one line of force, and the other one she just left out. And I think it makes a lot of sense to just avoid this issue. Then the youth plaza, quite naturally along the crown, and maybe one cultural plaza in front of Kalabumi, establishing the heart of the cultural zone. And this maybe could be a place where you would have a little bit of nightlife in Oroville, where some cafes could also be open until 10 or something. In the second part, maybe shared traffic, not totally pedestrian, of the crown along the residential zone. There would be only minor public places, one at the entrance and one in front of Humanscapes is already kind of established, maybe needs some improvement. One major question that for me then came up was also a discussion that I picked up in the process that so on the one hand, what Roger's I think tried to do with the typologies around the crown is to have it very permeable. So he also has made this graphic showing how this permeable typology, mostly up on stilts, leaving the ground floor open in a lot of places, allows for movement. But then he puts the road in front of all that, and the road becomes kind of secondary. And for me, it's a feeling that this then becomes the actual barrier. And for me to solve that problem was to not make the road just a service road, but really make the road a center. So anyway, as you saw before in the traffic plan, we tried to make the area in front of the residential zone pedestrian. So there's actually no need to have the pedestrian zone apart from the actual crown road. So then the idea was, okay, what makes the crown road connect inside out? And my idea was more that if you really bring density up to the road and the road becomes the center, then it actually connects both sides. You can see the interplay of the major plazas finding these spaces and also interlinking them with green, opening at least two of the main plazas up to the green space, and having the water catchments around the crown. One thing that when I try to kind of get an idea of what is happening in this pedestrian zone, what kind of typology suggests itself by what is there on the ground, taking into account that I kind of would want to create density to make the crown important and connecting. That maybe in the first part, from the Solar Kitchen Plaza to the first Radial Plaza, it could be very dense and city-like, maybe even G+2, G+3. And then in the middle, there's the part where the crown intersects with the Joy community, and you have a kind of loose ensemble which is around the crown. And maybe this could be picked up on, and so a kind of village theme could be created there. And then towards, and then you might have a cut for a green corridor, and towards the line of goodwill, the structures would get bigger and bigger. So it's the three themes, the dense city, the village, the megastructure. So you kind of see the more loose ensemble, and then with one line of force touching the crown, then starts the next theme. Yeah, and there I just have two versions. One not including the green corridor in front of this line of force, and here it's there. Yeah, and one major angle for me to kind of get a sense of urban planning was the writing of Christoph Alexander, because I really appreciate how he understands space making and all that. And he also, the most well-known architecture book actually of the 20th century is The Pattern Language, where he created encyclopedia of well-functioning patterns in architecture, and this concept was quite influential, even laying the groundworks for Wikipedia and stuff like that. And I go so much in detail because I think it could maybe be also something how Auroville could communicate with Vastushilpa and evaluate the specific points of discussion to really have a good dialogue going forward, and in that manner brought also a few ideas of how these patterns could look like. So the main thing is you try to really coin a term that it becomes graspable, a clear problem statement, then a discussion, ideally with a lot of scientific input, and then a solution of how do you want to solve this problem. One pattern which I think could work well for the crown, and it's also picking up a little bit on one pattern by Christoph Alexander, the public outer room, would be the creation of communal spaces along the crown, wherever the vistas of the Matrimandia cross with the crown. This is actually an idea of the previous Dreamweaving sessions, 2005 to 2008. Wherever these vistas cross the crown, you would have one of these communal spaces. At the four main axes, you would have a bigger one, maybe even reflecting the geometric shapes of the four powers of the mother. So you would have a hexagon here, then a triangle in the international zone, a square in the industrial zone, and a circle in the cultural zone. Yeah, and so here are just some references how these spaces could look like, or how it could be artfully interpreted. Also, the idea being thinking about traditional iconic spaces, plazas. You often have the church as the main focus, or what is the actual main building that the community values, and that then these communal spaces could be that structure, which really, in an artistic form, celebrate the community. Yeah, and a second element, kind of picking up on this theme of the classical plaza. So you would have the church and the tower. If water towers could actually be this vertical element, really putting the water towers at the center of attention at these plazas, making them really pristine, and maybe even as viewing towers. And yeah, so this is the classical example, San Marco, and here's one modern interpretation in Britain, where you have the community's town hall and a viewing tower next to it, and other modern examples of how the vertical element can come into the plazas. Other patterns that I didn't put too much thought into was, to create shade on the crown. So along the residential zone, we would have on the south side creating the density, so it would make a lot of sense to create these buildings in a way that they would provide a lot of shade. So then to consider the typologies for these south side buildings, so that they have large roof overhangs and arcades and going deep into the street. And then apart from that, also what other shading elements could be interesting for placemaking. One pattern that I picked up from Vastushilpa is actually having these water catchments along the crown, where the crown kind of creates the span, at least, nearly all the way in the residential zone. That this typology of the catchment pond with gabions, so you would have a kund which is a percolation pond at the same time. Yeah, and so here just to kind of make a case for density and make it visible how it could look like with these different elements. So this would be the hexagon as the communal space, a town hall, the water tower, and then some amphitheater with some shading structure, and these typologies which have deep facades can also allow for green and go far into the street with their roofs. Again, the view on the Solar Kitchen Plaza. I mean, this is a little exaggerated with a water tower, but to get an idea. This is a market hall that could be where Foodling is now, and this could be the second plaza at the radial, again with a communal space along one of the vistas, a water tower at the edge of the building, and the catchment pond. And this briefly shows the different possibilities to use different road widths and still get a good amount of shading. So whenever you get beyond like 14 meters, you would need at least 2 lines of trees, and this is where I think what would be more preferable. And this is just basically the annex to see what these pattern languages can give for input. So this is there's 2 main books which I referenced here, and so this is for later digestion if anyone is interested. Okay, thank you.